I'm Bryan Miller, and welcome back to the Acme's Funniest Person podcast, where we talk to contestants who have been in one of the longest-running comedy contests in the Midwest. It's got to be. We're past 3 decades, and we have somebody. This is great. I just met him last night, and it's great. From the first contest.
The funniest person in the Twin Cities contest, 1992.
1992.
Made it all the way to the end of the first round. Made
Which-
it all
and
the
there
way
was
to
only-
the end of my set.
Yeah, but there was only 2 rounds at that point, I believe, right? Oh, it's actually Greg Fideler.
I don't know.
I should say Greg Fideler.
Thank
That's
you.
who it
Thank
is.
you, Brian.
From Australia. We'll get there.
Yeah, from Australia via Bloomington. Yeah. I don't remember because, my exit was quite quick.
Yeah.
But it was, it was an amazing night. Like, for anybody that goes out and it's the first time you're on stage is this room when it's packed with people. It's a pretty amazing experience.
And was that your first time on stage?
That was my first time. Well, I played in a band, but that was the first time I had ever done comedy. And if that's your first experience, when that's where the bar is, it is just, it's like everyone says, it's like Richard Pryor said in his book, if I stop doing this, I'll die. It's just heroin. It's just, you get that first hit and that's it. That's what you're going to do for the rest of your life.
Wow. So, what prompted you to do the contest? So you were in a band. What kind of band, by the way?
I was in a rock band. I was in a power trio when I was in high school. You might notice I have a little bit of hearing loss, so speak up. And I was a bass player, and that kind of sums up my personality. I was just the guy in the back, throbbing away on the thing. It's not quite a guitar. It's not quite the drums. Splitting the difference. You just stand back there. We need you. We don't really want you in the band, but we need you in the band. And all my life, people had told me that I was funny and that I should be a stand-up comedian. So I grew up. I went to college. I started working for an insurance company. And when I got to be 27 years old, I finally went, okay, I'll try it.
Oh, wow. So that was the same age I started, actually.
Yeah, I was coming back from somewhere, and on the radio, they ran an ad for it on the radio. Funniest Person in Twin Cities contest. I memorized the number to called them up, and now that I think about it, I did not get in. And the day of the contest, I was at work at National Car Rental in Edina when that was still there, and I either got a call somehow or a fax that said, yes, somebody dropped out. If you want to come down and do it tonight, you can do it. Bring a bunch of your friends down. So it was actually a last-minute thing that almost didn't happen. And I came down, and I did it.
Did you have jokes written at that point that you'd kind of been working on that you wanted to try? Or did you have to kind of wing it?
I had purchased a video camera, remember, like when the video camera was, like this big. I remember that. Like they just became very popular in 1991. I remember I think I bought it at Dayton's Fabulous Warehouse Sale. I don't know if they still have that, but they used to give away, sell the leftover stuff. And the great thing was it was in February, and you'd line up for all the stuff that didn't sell at Christmas time. You would literally line up, and people would run in and grab stuff. And the video camera was a hot thing. So I was doing comedy videos with my brother down in his basement trying to be funny. So I had a couple of sketches that we'd written that I thought, well, I can adapt these and turn them into stand-up. So luckily I was prepared for the big moment.
Yeah, it was. See, this is interesting that and you go on to be a comedy writer as well, and this makes sense because even your earliest pre-comedy brain still identified structures, bits. A lot of people who just go up and wing it. A lot of people, a surprising number of people.
Yes, and that is something that, and this as a comic is. People will ask you, I'm very introverted and I get very nervous and I can't eat before I do a show. So Thursday night, I've got, my family wants to come down and see me, and they see me a million times, but they want to come down and see me. So now I got 12 people sitting out there and everybody's coming up and, hey, where am I supposed to park my car and all this stuff. And they don't understand that, look, I'm trying to get my mind ready. I can't deal with all your stuff. I need it to be quiet, and all that kind of stuff. And then people will go, oh, you're nervous? Have a beer, just have a couple beers and loosen up and go up there. And, for most performers, That's the worst thing in the world. I don't want people that I know in the audience. I don't want to have a beer. I don't want to be messed up, and I don't want to loosen up. I want to remember all the stuff that I did. I want to sharpen it up and make sure that it works, and I need to really be in the moment to do this. So, yeah, I know a lot of people's perception is, yeah, have a beer and go up there and wing it, and yeah, that's not usually how it works.
Yeah. But it did not serve you well in the first round. You did not win, right? So
I did not win, but I got one big laugh at the beginning. I did two different bits. I did a bit about Paul Majors doing the news, which always worked in the 90s. It was Paul Majors, but he was doing the news, not the weather. Oh, who was the weather guy?
I didn't live here then.
Okay, Paul Douglas.
Paul Douglas, yeah, he's still around.
Yeah, we made a lot of fun of him, but he was doing like the crime report as the weather, which
fun.
has probably been done like a million times.
That's a fun structure.
In 1992, yeah, you know, and it just killed. And then I did my second bit was Andrew Dice Clay performing his act completely in German. And that was a little bit meta for its time.
Yeah.
It didn't really. It was the first half of the first 90 seconds of the 3 minutes. It was just loud, one long loud laugh, and the second 90 seconds was just quiet. It was just, but like I said, you hear that laugh when you're up here, and you're like, I need to go back and get some more of that. I mean, I had proven that it would work.
Yeah, right. You go, oh, I just
it
need
was
to write
very
more
uneven,
bits like
but
the first bit
it,
as opposed to the second bit.
Yeah, it could work. It proved it could work.
So then did you start coming out to open mic after that?
Yes, Becky Johnson, who worked here at the time, she came up to me after the show and said, "You're really funny. You should keep doing this." And I was like, you know, that's like your dream when you do this contest for the first time. Someone please validate me. And I was ready for that moment. I said, "Oh, how do I do that? Where else? You know, how do I come down here and do this again?" And she said, "Well, I will give you a list of open mics in town." And she probably faxed them to me, or I don't know, put a stamp on a postage thing and sent it to me at the time. And I had a list of about 4 or 5 places that did open mic, and that was it. I just started religiously going to open mic. Every open mic I could do, I did every open mic that there was, and I was just horrible. It was probably... You know, the first time I stepped on stage, this room was full, and I got a couple of really huge laughs. It was probably a year before I got another laugh, and that's the hard part.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is more common than not.
Yes,
I think. I mean, I think most people don't realize how, and you think back on how bad you are, and you think, thank God I didn't have any depth of appreciation of how bad I actually was.
Yes.
That ignorance allows me to persevere long enough that I get not quite so bad, you know.
Being a stand-up comic is a strange combination of arrogance and low self-esteem at the same time. You just need to strike the right combination, or to know when to have, when to just be thinking, I'm funnier than all those people up there right now, and knowing I need to work on this. That's what it was like for me. So
yeah, and don't you think I think sometimes people have an instinctive thing of going like, I know these ideas in my head are funnier than they're coming across. Like I got to just figure out how to get this interpreted right so that people get it.
Yeah, well, for me, I was a writer, and that's why, like, I wrote a bunch of comedy, and I didn't know what to do with it, and I just didn't know what to do with the jokes that I was writing, because I did not want to get up on a stage and do them. I'm not what you'd call a comedian. I had to learn how to do that. I instinctively write comedy. So I got this notebook full of jokes and no place to put them. I went around to late night shows, and they were just, no one's going to talk to you because you're nobody. And then this contest rolled around. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do these jokes. So once I got into open mic, let's just empty out the notebook, and let's just keep generating more, and just keep writing and writing and writing. Write, perform, edit. Write, perform, edit. And so I just kept doing that. And it took me a while before I realized there's two aspects to it. There's writing and there's performing, and I am a horrible performer. And if I'm going to advance in this, I need to learn how to perform. But I had never given any thought into how to perform, because when I watched other comics, all I cared about was their writing.
Interesting. So your brain's like reading the Matrix. You're seeing the structure of the jokes, but you're not really catching the vibe.
I'm performing the way that I think a stand-up comic is supposed to be, and that's not what the audience is after. But what it boils down to is it took me, a good amount of years than to figuring out your style. And it took me a good amount of years to do that. But what it boiled down to was like a year being pretty quick. 1-2 years into it, I realized, I'm not what you'd call a performer. But I can learn how to do that because I'd been around at that point long enough watching other people and watching them improve to go, well, I can take what I got and I can improve it if I start focusing on the right areas.
I've heard Lewis say it a million times. He said, if you can write, you can become a good comedian. But he's like, you might be able to learn to write. Some people start off not writing much and really become good at it. But if you never get the writing, you're screwed, But you can. I don't know that people could learn to be like, a Richard Pryor level charisma, like a singular vibe charisma like that, but most comics aren't that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You can at least learn to, if you have a good writer who can learn to be like a serviceable, confident stage persona, you're good.
And that's exactly what I did. And that's really what it's all about. It's finding your style. That's a long way of saying it's finding your style, but as you're learning it, you got to pick apart every little piece of it before it clicks. That's what you're doing is you're learning how to perform your stuff. And if you are naturally like an extrovert and you're Chris Farley and you just want to get up and you just want people looking at you, then those are the amazing people that are the ones that I'm just going to have a beer and I'll figure it out when I'm up there. And in the moment, they're brilliant. But I think comedians, like performers, generally, they don't want to be famous. They're not after fame. They're after notoriety. They want to be recognized for doing something really well. Like, I was always described as being shy, but I made a living walking into a room full of strangers and making them laugh for an hour. Shy people don't do that.
Yeah.
But I wanted these people to see my ideas and give me recognition that they're funny. And for some people, it's just the performance part of it. They just want to be up there talking about something, and it's the performance part of it for them. For me, it was always the writing part. So I had to learn to perform.
Sure.
Because I wasn't a natural performer.
I always felt the same way in that I write jokes for other people, for other shows and stuff sometimes. And so I know some people say, like, oh, it must kill you when you see somebody getting a big laugh with your joke. And I go, that's great. It's a good joke. The joke, in my mind, the joke worked.
Yes.
That's all. I'm not thinking like, but people didn't look at me. It's like, no, I just want the jokes to work.
Yeah, you want to see this stuff work. And that's what's important to you. I thought of this. I think this is going to make people laugh. Proof of concept, it just worked because you watched me and you came out and you helped me write a joke.
Yeah.
Now this can be a problem. Here's what's a problem is I was a writer and I always wanted to write. I guess growing up for the Tonight Show.
Sure.
So that was my goal. So I started hitting up the late night shows. Lo and behold, if you do it for like 3 years, after after like 3 rejection letters. One day I get a phone call with some guy with this heavy East Coast accent, and he goes, yeah, I'm Bill Sheft. I coordinate the monologue at the Late Show with David Letterman, and I've got your submission here. We really like it, and can you fax us 2 pages of jokes tomorrow? And if Dave likes one and does it on the air, we'll give you $75. And that's a moment that changes your life. So I did that.
Letterman do the first joke that you wrote. The first time when he did one, that must have been mind-melting.
It was. But what really blew me away was the way that Bill knew that that's what was going through my mind. We went to I remember what happened was, remember telephones, the thing with the cord on the wall, and if you weren't there when it rang, you didn't know.
It didn't happen.
So obviously they record the Late Show at like 5 or 5:30 or something. So they're done by probably like 5 or 5:30. Yeah, Minnesota time. And we were going to a St. Paul Saints game, and I'm just walking out the door. And the phone rings, and I pick it. And the woman I was living with at the time, she goes, hey, Greg, Bill Bauer's on the phone.
Oh, Bill Bauer.
And I go, oh, cool. Yeah, I talked to Bill. What's going on? I pick it up. It's Bill Sheft, because she had gotten it wrong. And he's in the studio. And he goes, hey, Greg, Dave just did one of your jokes. And I'm like, oh, wow, fantastic. Which one? He told me which one it was. He goes, it was great. It got screams. And then I realized in the background, they're still taping the show.
Whoa.
Like he couldn't wait to
Nice.
call me to tell me your joke made the air. So I'm like, oh, this is, in my life, this is the greatest thing that's happened to me so far. I'm like, thank you. I put a tape in the VCR. You remember what a VCR is? You know, to cue it up so that it's going to tape the Late Show with David Letterman at 10:30, from 10:30 to like, well, I better set it to like 11 just to make sure I get the joke. So we go off to the baseball game, and I come back, and I remember what happened. This is a little bit dark. There was an airplane that took off from, it was either Kennedy or LaGuardia, and it exploded.
Oh, I remember. So this
It was
would have been
Flight 800 or something.
Yeah,
this is
TWA
1996.
flight. Yeah, 96 TWA.
And so
yeah.
there was news reports about that all the time, and it had pushed the Late Show back.
Oh.
And so I missed it. The VCR missed it. And I didn't get to record it. But yeah, so yeah, we come home from the baseball game. We're sitting out, waiting, and it never comes on. And then, yeah, so I did not get to see it until it's on YouTube now. I picked it up on YouTube, but
Nice.
Do
you remember? Do you know the joke?
Well, it was after. I can tell you what the joke is, but it's a topical joke.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's. I'll probably get the.
I'll just tell you what the joke is. This is, Dallas Cowboys wide receiver Michael Irvin started his community service this week. He was convicted for cocaine possession, but and I'll do it the way David Letterman. But Michael Irvin going out there, he's starting his community service work today. From Dallas Cowboys, he's going out there today, and here's the deal, people. Here's what Michael Irvin has to do for his community service work. He has to get up every morning at the crack of dawn and go look for Robert Downey Jr. Dave would take a joke, a setup and a punchline, and he'd turn it into a 1-minute story. And, yeah, the audience was screaming, and at the same time I'm watching going, you're putting too many words into it.
Sure.
Robert, not look for, you shorten that up. And, your punchline isn't, even at that point, I was just like, dude, you're just butchering this. But, Dave made it work, and it made it work for him. And, yeah, it was amazing. So that's it, man. And I think that was in the first batch of jokes that I sent in.
Wow.
I'm just like, wow, this is easy. And seriously, it was 2 months later before I got another joke on. I was ready to quit. I was just like, wow, here we go again with the beginner's luck, and now nothing. And then suddenly one night, boom, wow, Dave did one of my jokes. I've been waiting for so long. Boom, next joke. Wow, I just got 2 on the air. This is amazing. And that's when it started to get really consistently, I'd get like 2 or 3 a week on there. Wow. And then eventually, like after a year, he called me out there, and because Bill was leaving. Bill had been there for a long time, and he said, well, Dave's going to interview 4 people, and one of them is going to get my job. So I recommended you and these 3 other guys. So I flew out there, I met Dave, I interviewed with him. I did not get the gig, but he liked me enough that he put me on a retainer. He said, look, we're just going to pay you every week. Just send us as many jokes as you can every day, and we'll just send you a check.
Wow.
So I got in. There was like this little niche between just freelance faxing and being on the staff, and that was, again, just life-changing, because now I've been doing stand-up around here for like 6 years, and I can middle, and I can go out to everywhere, Duluth, Grand Forks. I can go down to Kansas City, North Platte. I'm working for Ken Muller, Tom Hansen, all that stuff. I'm middling, and I'm making middle money.
Yeah.
But now I got Dave paying me every week, so it's get up in the morning, write 2 pages of jokes, fax them in, get in a car, drive to North Platte, Nebraska, do a show, go home, go back to your hotel room, see if you got a joke on the air, get up the next morning, do it again, and I was actually making some pretty good money, and that's what made it possible for me to drive around the country as a middle and write for television at the same time. It was a fantastic experience, and it's just, you think you're not getting anywhere, and then all of a sudden you look up and you go, wow, I'm doing this.
Wow, that's incredible. And then didn't you also write for the Tonight Show as well?
So
the Leno.
Yeah, I'm, and it's just such a wonderful thing to be a stand-up comedian out on the road, doing all these comedy clubs. And in the days before the internet, you just met people.
Yeah.
Like you'd go to a comedy club, and you'd go to the Funny Bone in St. Louis to do a guest spot. I'm really funny. I've worked for so and so. if I do a set here and I'm funny, will you give me a week? Yeah. And so you're standing around talking to that act and the headliner this week and, the guy who was here last week and it's so-and-so. And through that network, one day my phone rings and it's a guy with a really thick East Coast accent. And he goes, hey, my name's Tony Darrow, and, I got your name from Rocky Laporte. You worked with him and, something in Southport, Indiana or something. And I'm one of the other guys that writes for Dave. And I'm like, oh, cool. He's like, yeah, I do stand-up. And so, yeah, we're bonding and we're friends. And, me and Tony got into this this bromance where he's driving around the country doing stand-up. I'm driving around the country doing stand-up. And we made an agreement that whatever city we were in, we were going to buy the Daily 3 lottery ticket and play the other guy's birthday.
Okay.
And we did it for like a week, and my birthday hit, I don't know, somewhere in Vermont or Connecticut, wherever the hell he was, going around doing stand-up. So, yeah, we were having a lot of fun. Yeah, he's, talking football and all this kind of stuff. And then one day he goes, hey, Colin Quinn is on, got the Weekend Update gig. So, and Colin's one of my friends. So if you want to send him jokes, talk to Robert Carlock. I'll have him call you. So, boom, there you go. I'm on Weekend Update. I'm getting jokes on Weekend Update. This is fantastic. And then, I was talking to Tony one time, and he goes, if Dave finds out you're writing for Weekend Update, you're done. So don't tell anybody. You write for Dave. You cannot write for anybody else, including Leno. And by the way,
Leno, probably.
Don't tell anybody I'm writing for Leno and have been for like 3 years. Some people can do it. It's, just don't tell anybody. And I went, dude, if you're doing it. He's like, well, yeah, you could do it. Didn't you know you could do that? And I'm like, I didn't know I could do that. He's like, well, any comedian can pick up a phone and call Jay Leno at any time and talk about comedy. I said, I didn't know that. He's like, yeah. And he gave me all these examples.
Wow.
And he's like, well, here, just call this person. And so I did. So I called Jay, and he picks up the phone. He's like, hey, Greg, how's it going? And I'm like, so I got your name from Tony Darrow, and I write for Dave. Oh, yeah, Tony, tell me about you. He said, send me some jokes. If they're funny, go out and do them. And so all of a sudden, I'm writing for Dave. I'm writing for Saturday Night Live. I'm writing for The Tonight Show, all at the same time.
I was watching all of that stuff at exactly that time, by the way.
Yeah,
I was definitely watching all of that.
So that was a lot of fun, doing that. So then, one day the Letterman thing ended. It ended, and I'm sitting I think I was sitting in a hotel room in Madison, Wisconsin, and phone rings, and it's a guy with this kind of really high-pitched, whiny East Coast accent, and it's Jay Leno. And I think it's a joke, I think, somebody's, messing with me, because a lot of people do Jay Leno impressions. It's
big time.
I can't do impressions. I can do one impression. It's Jay Leno. That's it. That's the
exactly.
best. What you heard there literally is the best that I got. And I'm like, wow. And he goes, yeah, I heard your gig ended with Dave. Well, you know what? What was that dude's name? One of his guys was taking a leave of absence. He said, why don't you come out here? I can give you a gig, through one 13-week Writers Guild cycle, and, you can at least get into the Writers Guild, get a place to stay, maybe get yourself established in L.A. I can't guarantee you that I can renew you when, Larry comes back, because he's going to want his job back. But, if you want to do it, come out here and get the experience. Why don't you do it? That's just amazing. Again, it's the kind of phone call that, someone in show business is helpful. That's always how it happens.
Yeah.
And so, of course, I said yes, and I packed up my Nissan Sentra, and I drove to Los Angeles. Yeah, and worked on the show out there, which was, I mean, it's a dream come true.
And you were in the writer's room for that cycle.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do, and now I'm doing it. So, this is like a dream of mine. And so I show up, first day, I go down to, you go downstairs to go to the bathroom. And for some reason, I was down by the dressing rooms. I can't remember why. And I go into the men's room, and these two dudes walk in, and they're really loud. And they're having this conversation about coconut milk. And it was coconut water, and how this one dude was saying, oh, I love the coconut water. It's so great. But, man, it really makes me pee all the time. The other one's like, yeah, I know, but yeah, he's got to pee. And I look over, and it's Carlos Santana. So yeah, I'm watching Carlos Santana take a leak. So now this is 2 dreams that I've had that have been realized. You know,
specifically wanted to see Carlos Santana pee.
I have very specific dreams, and that's what it was like. One day I'm walking down the hallway at the Tonight Show, and some dude is walking up and down the hallway playing the trumpet. You know, so the trumpet, you know, it kind of covers up your face as you're playing it. So it took me like 2 or 3 times back and forth to realize it's Sting. And it was like that, you know, it was every day was an event. First of all, you come into the parking lot, and Jay's got the first parking space next to the door. And Jay would drive a different vehicle to work every single day. So there was always a group of guys standing there waiting to see what he was going to pull up in, because the first thing he does is he pulls up, and then he talks to the guys about his car or his motorcycle. Or one day he drove up in this thing that I can't describe. I'm not sure what it is. I doubt if it was legal. It was like a flat piece of wood with an engine up here that was enormous and a steering wheel. Just bizarre stuff. But so yeah. And then it would be like, okay, who's on the show today? Is it, you know, I know one time, you know, it was Jimmy Page and Metallica doing something together. Kid Rock was there when I was, you know, and a truck is going to pull up and load in a band, and it's going to be a band that is super famous, and there's going to be a bunch of people lined up around that gate over there because they want to get a glimpse of whoever it is. You know, it was just like that. You know, I want to go have a sandwich. I go sit down in the commissary. Keanu Reeves is sitting there, you know, 3 tables away from me. So every day is an event. You got about like 200 people that are working to all make it happen. And then you're sitting down, like, read the news, you know, interns come in, they bring you this big stack of, back in those days, printed out news, and you start going through it. When, you know, at this point in time, this is what I've done every morning for the last 4 or 5 years.
Muscle memory now. Right?
Perfect. Start writing jokes, send them down to Lisa. Lisa's going to give them to Jay. The ones that he likes, he's going to put on cue cards. Then 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he's going to sit down, go through rehearsal. He's got about 50 jokes. He's going to read them all. You know, throw out the ones he doesn't like. Then she's going to tell you he wants more jokes on this, more jokes on that. Yeah, and then finish writing, and then it's time to lock the rehearsal, and then you start working on the next day's stuff. And then I think it was like 5 or 5:30, go down, and we're going to start taping. They do it live to tape, which means it's being videotaped, but they don't stop and redo stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it's live to tape, so all the writers are going to stand over in that corner, lean against the wall. They're going to laugh at the jokes that they wrote. They're not going to laugh at anyone else's jokes. And as soon as the monologue's over, we're up and we're out of here, and you go home. And then you get home back the next morning and do it, and Jay is going to, you know, stick around after the show and sign autographs for people. Then he's probably going to get on a jet, fly to Las Vegas, and do a show for Microsoft or some big corporation or something like that, and then come back to L.A. at the end of the night. The man just does not. He's probably slowed down by now, but at the time, just absolutely amazing. He has to be like a cyborg. I was in Minot, North Dakota. Have you done that room?
I've done Minot, North Dakota. I don't know if
it was. I think it was the Holiday Inn in Minot. And
God, I think I did. That is what I did.
I was reading the newspaper, and it was probably like a Friday, Saturday gig, so it's Sunday, and maybe like on my way home. And the ad in the Sunday paper was there was going to be a big rodeo out there. I think the rodeo might have been in Williston.
I've been to Williston as well.
But the big feature for the rodeo was Jay Leno. So he's hosting the Tonight Show 46 weeks a year, and he's doing the rodeo in Minot or Williston or wherever it was, just on a random Sunday, because he loves doing stand-up comedy, and he just works constantly. And it's like that, and that's why, anybody could back in those days just call up Jay and go, I'm a comic, and can you give me some advice?
That's amazing.
Sure. Here's 10, 15 minutes of my time, and call me if you need anything. Yeah, he's an amazing human being.
That's great. And then you also, we'll wrap up here soon. I don't want to keep you too long, but I had to ask you, so one of your other jobs, you were executive producer for The Soup, head writer?
Well, I started as a producer, which was a writer. I started as a writer before we were in the Writers Guild. We eventually got Writers Guild coverage, so they started calling us writers, and at that point, I was also a producer, got to be a supervising producer, and eventually co-executive producer.
Nice.
Because we were running along for an 11-year run on there. You tend to move up. So that was just an amazing experience. And another one that began in Minnesota
Oh.
because I used to do stand-up comedy all over these parts here with a gentleman named KP Anderson who's
Yes,
from
yes.
Cambridge, Minnesota, and is a graduate of Hamline University. And at the time was KP, I think his first writing job might have been Politically Incorrect. Then he did a little bit of stuff for Keenan Ivory Wayans, did the Wayne Brady Show, won a Daytime Emmy. Yeah. He always jokes about the Daytime Emmy. But yeah, so then KP got picked to run the reboot from Talk Soup into The Soup.
And who was the first host of The Soup?
That was Joel McHale.
That was Joel McHale. That's right.
But I think the show had a different. They may have called it the WTF Awards.
Really, before they
did a
renamed it The
half a season, and they didn't like it. They said this needs to be something else, something a little bit different. So they brought in KP because he had some pretty heavy, comedy variety experience, and just had the right sense of humor, the right mentality to do it. Just this young, hungry guy that's looking for something to turn into something, and so they said, okay, this is great. This is yours. You have no budget. Go hire some writers. And the joke that Joel always made was, my writers are the best writers you can buy that for less than Writers Guild money. So KP just went out around to his, people that he met in the world of stand-up that he thought were good joke writers, and he assembled quite a crew. And it just turned out better than anybody thought it would.
Yeah, I mean, that show was huge. And launched McHale, of course. Into
It launched Joel, and Joel's a pretty immense talent. When you get to watch somebody learn how to be famous and learn how to be funny, because it ain't easy. Like I got to see how they make the sausage.
Yeah.
That guy put a lot of work into it. It's fascinating to see that. So that was beautiful, but it was so much fun. It was so much fun. We just had the right mix of people because we all liked each other, because most of us knew each other from stand-up, and then the other people that came along for the ride, they kind of absorbed our culture because they had no choice.
Sure.
I mean, the stand-ups ran the writer's room. But the other people that he fought were very interesting because they were good, like directors. They were good at writing bits and chunks, and they were good at producing things, and then they kind of taught us, like their production habits rubbed off on us, and our sense of humor rubbed off on them. And it actually, The Soup could not be a more appropriate name, because we turned into this wonderful mix of sarcastic comedy. And we all got to be great friends. And we did this thing where we thought we knew each other so well. You're writing jokes every day. And for a show like that, it's going to be on once a week. But every day we write stuff because you don't know what's going to stick in the news and what's going to be old. So every day we're we're throwing away shows and shows worth of great jokes. So we came up with this idea. We thought we knew each other so well. We thought that maybe KP was getting bored reading our material. So someone suggested that we switch personas. So let's say your name is Tess Rafferty, who is a fabulous writer who was on that show, and you've got a certain sense of humor and you've got certain references that you use. So I'm going to write my material today like I'm Tess, and I'm going to put her name on it, and she's going to send it in through her email, and she's going to write her stuff as Greg and send it into KP to see if he notices and to see what jokes get picked.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting.
So we would do that every now and again. And the thing that we learned about it is we all think the other people are really racist and horrible because they all turned out to be these horrible caricatures and exaggerations. Like there would be some truth in the way that we wrote the jokes, but we would go way, way overboard.
It was because you had like the mask of the other person on to some degree.
It's because we know each other and we can say these kind of things and we can say you're that kind of person. Yeah. And again, it's just gross exaggerations. And I mean, grossly exaggerating something for comedic effect is what you do anyhow.
Did we pick up on it, by the way?
Yeah, it was always very obvious that it was being written from a place of, I don't know, maybe someone trying to get back at somebody for something that happened, or thinking, well, you get your jokes on just because you talk about this, or, that's someone's favorite topic or because you
Yeah.
word it a certain way. So there was a lot of that in there, but we knew each other well enough that we could do things like that. And that's what made it a great show. And at the same time, we just watched reality television become the monster that it is. I mean, now it's just normal, but we
Yeah.
were watching it. I remember when the show started, almost all of our editorializing on shows was, this is so horrible, reality shows, and look at these horrible people. And after a while, we were like, wow, that doesn't play anymore. This is just normal.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not a mean judge on that talent show. That's just the judge on the talent show.
Yeah.
That's it. And that isn't the horrible person on the real world. All these shows are like that. It's
Yeah, the whole like, oh my God, the Kardashians are ruining the world is kind of harder to argue when there's 40 other shows just like the Kardashians. You're like, well, I think this is just a thing now.
Yeah, and they're also paying to keep the lights on at our network. To be perfectly honest, we thought, it was like, look at these people that are famous for nothing, and blah 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 this, and they didn't do anything to earn this. And there's 10 times as many people watching their show as is watching our show, and then you realize, wow, we think we're funny, and maybe we are, but we're not popular.
Yeah.
It's people like this stuff. It's beautiful. And then we started liking it. And what happened is, everybody has to watch shows
Right.
to bring in clips, kind of the same way as you would vet jokes. Everybody watched the clip. Did everybody watch it, laugh at it or not? So people would fight over what are the easy shows to get clips from? But eventually we started fighting over the shows that we wanted to watch. So then we all kind of
people became fans of some of
yeah,
them.
like I got to become an expert in like the guy shows, like the History Channel, shows about truckers and people that live in Alaska and skin their dinner and because I was a little bit older than everybody and I'm male and I'm from the Midwest, so
Yeah.
I got all those kind of shows and there was tons of them, So when I brought in a clip, it was always like somebody chasing an animal around and. But it was fun too. We'd have to mix it up. Like people would go on vacation or whatnot, and we'd have to cover for them. I remember one time watching a couple of weeks worth of the Bad Girls Club when Nick DeLeo went on vacation, and I am so sorry to say that you get hooked on it, and you start to get invested in the characters that you think you've been ridiculing it for so long, and Nick comes back and you're like, can I watch this week again? Because I want to see what happened to that one girl that said she was never going to go back to Kansas City. Did she go back to Kansas City again? And all that stuff. So, yeah. And one of the things that one of my experiences with soup was that I married, this has nothing to do with the soup, but I married an actress when I was in Los Angeles. I married this actress from Australia. And, she would go to some tapings and, she was kind of invested in the show because of me. But there's been 2 people on the show that she really wanted to meet. One was Kylie Minogue, which, okay, she's from Australia. The other one was the cast from Ghost Hunters, because it turns out she is a ghost hunter. She's done ghost hunting. She did some ghost hunting at the Pico Hotel in Los Angeles is haunted. You can pay to go on the tour. And she wanted Zach Baggins to sign her book. She bought a copy of the book. I've got pictures of her with the ghost hunter guys. And okay, man, if that's what you want, sure, hang out with them. I wrote a bit mocking them, mercilessly mocking what they do. Ghost hunting is fake and all this stuff. And they came in, they played along. We shot the bit. People laughed at it. He signed my wife's book. It's all fine. A couple of years later, we had our first child. And all I cared about was that it's a boy for a lot of reasons. We ran out of males in my family.
Sure.
We ran out of males in her family. I said, you can pick the name. I'm just so happy this is a boy. She goes, oh, what do you think about Zach? I go, Zach, that's kind of a cool name. Yeah, And, God, there's a lot of different ways to spell it. How are we going to spell it? Like Z-A-Q, Z-I-C. It's just like, oh, I got that figured out already. Z-A-K. Okay, fine, whatever. My kid was about 2 when I looked over at the book Zach Baggins and Z-A-K. And my kid is Z-A-K, and I've never met anyone else named Z-A-K, Zach. And in all the times of people asking me, how do you spell your kid's name, no one has ever spelled it Z-A-K. And that's when I realized my kid is named after a ghost hunter. Not just any ghost hunter, the most famous ghost hunter in the world, and a ghost hunter that has been the butt of probably a dozen jokes that I've written in my life. But people love these shows. My wife loves ghost hunting. My wife loves reality shows. And, I guess it's just that we like different reality shows. But That's it. People ask me, how does your son spell his name? And I tell them it's the traditional ghost hunter spelling.
And now you live in Australia.
Now we live in Australia, yeah.
And how much comedy do you get to do there?
I do a lot of comedy in Australia. I produce shows. I perform shows. I do some writing. I'm working on an animated show right now. It's a kid's show about eggs that fly through outer space and play music. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's animated. So I kind of lucked out. Again, first person in Australia I met is David Rose, who is a comedian and does a little of the stand-up here in the United States. But he just was very helpful to me. He's like, yeah, I'll teach you how to produce shows. And I just started doing it, and he hooked me up with a gentleman named Dave Hughes, who was probably the biggest comedian in Australia. And Dave worked for me, and then when everyone else saw that Dave did a show for me, then there you go. Now I know everybody. But their system there is very different. It is all centered around having a famous person and doing one show somewhere and selling tickets off the name of the famous person. So they wouldn't have a place like this. There's no Acme. There's no, hey, let's just go down to the comedy club. I don't know who's there this week, but I know it's going to be good.
Yeah.
You know?
It's the place that you go and you want to see comedy, and then we'll see what the comedy is. Or the comedy cellar or the comedy store.
It's very different. But, what they're missing there is, like, I realized this so much when I came back here and my family came down to see me. And they started going through, I remember we came down here and saw you when you opened for Dana Gould and Dave Attell and Louis C.K. and Louis Black, and they just rattled off this list of people. That doesn't happen in Australia, where you go to the comedy club, random person, and 5 years later, wow, that's a famous person.
Yeah.
That person has to already be famous before someone's going to go to their comedy show. So it's a very difficult system to get from, like, middle act to headliner.
Sure.
But it's easy to jump in, and because I just produce shows, I go into a venue that I think has a suitable showroom, and ask them, do you mind if I bring 150 people into your venue one night a month? And they'll usually go, yeah, go ahead. We'll sell them drinks. I'll sell tickets. So I just got to go out, get an act that can sell tickets. So it's a very different system. But it's starting to work. It's fun in its own way, because now each show there is like an event, like it's a real event.
Nice. Well, that's great. Well, before we go, I always ask everybody, do you have any advice for future contestants?
Just keep doing it, and that is, people used to say that to me, and I just didn't understand what it meant. And just like, really, that just sounds so generic. You don't have anything specific to say. You could write a book. You could go through a whole hour of talking like we just did about why you need to keep doing it and the different things you need to work on and why it's going to be important later. But yeah, that is the truth. The only thing you really need to worry about when you're starting out, just keep doing it. And when I got to Australia, I had worked on the soup. I had a day job. You know what I mean? I've been going into an office for 11 years. You don't go out and do stand-up at night when you live in L.A. There's people that wait all day to get a spot at the Comedy Store. I'm writing at work all day. You can't do that. There's open mic in LA, but after you've been like a road comic, and you're not going to go do an open mic and, wait in line to do. You're performing in front of the other comedians.
Right.
No one goes to comedy shows in Los Angeles.
Right.
No one goes to open mic. No one cares about you unless you're Jerry Seinfeld or Chris Rock or Dave Chappelle. So I had not done stand-up in about 10 years when I get to Australia. So now I'm on the other side of the world. I haven't done stand-up in 10 years. The world has changed sometime between 2010 and 2018. Everything is different. And I'm starting over again. And I go to an open mic, and it's a little bit different there. There's 20 people on this list, and I get there, and they're like, okay, you can go up 21st. So I sit there through the whole thing, and you get a little more people that will show up for a show like that. So I don't know, there's like 10, 15 people, and you're sitting in the back watching all these horrible people, and you're watching people get up and leave, and you're just hoping, I hope there's some audience left by the time I'm up. Yeah. So it gets to be my turn, and there's 3 people in the room, and So the person, okay, you're next. And I go, all right, well, you can tell people that I've written for The Tonight Show and Late Show with David Letterman and Saturday Night Live. And they just looked at me. No one else has credits.
Yeah, right.
No one. It didn't dawn. No one else has been introduced. Don't give a shit.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I'm just going to say your name. So I walk up there in front of, the 4 people. And it was, that was another experience that's just like, wow, it's like having a stroke. It's just like,
Yeah.
I know how to do this, but I got to relearn how to do this. So I went back and just decided I'm going to forget everything that I think I know about stand-up, and I'm going to take the advice that people always gave me and kind of do it by the book, if you would. And that seems to be working really well this time. Plus, like, I skipped over this before. We were talking about writing for other people because, I'm writing for David Letterman and Jay Leno and SNL, and that's great. But I'm writing like topical stuff every day. So my act tended to be like topical stuff and just stuff in the news and stuff. And I never talked about myself. Didn't like it because I'm shy. Just thought, that's really hack. Yeah, I know your dad is weird. My dad is weird too. Let's talk about, healthcare or, this thing that happened in the news. And so now all of a sudden I'm on the other side of the world and I'm living in a new country. I split up with my wife. So now I'm a single dad in a different country. Now I got shit to talk about. So I started talking about myself and my experiences. And I got to say, it's a lot funner. It's a lot more interesting. And it just kind of works better. That thing I was talking about before where I couldn't seem to, when I was just telling jokes and it wasn't working, it's because I wasn't giving the audience any information about me.
Yeah, right.
They'd laugh if they liked the joke. And if they didn't like the next one, you reset to 0 and you got to earn it again. When you share things about yourself, they start to like you, and it makes a huge difference. If they like you, they'll laugh at the things that you say, and now it helps them get it. So that's another piece of advice is, I guess I don't know how to put that in words. Be authentic, or if it scares you to talk about yourself, that's the thing you should be talking about. I spent too much time writing, and not enough time just talking to people. Yeah.
That's great advice. Well, Greg, thanks for coming in.
Thank you,
for doing the
Bryan.
Podcast.
Appreciate you.
Come back from Australia anytime.
All right. Thank you for listening to my fever dreams.
Have a great night.
All right. Cheers.